Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a esta nueva sesión aquí en el Barcelona New Economy Week. Por este macroevento van a pasar nada más y nada menos que 800 speakers, más de 12.000 asistentes de 136 países distintos. ¿Qué se van a encontrar aquí si se acercan o se conectan por internet al evento? Pues muchas conferencias, muchas entrevistas y también muchos paneles. Nosotros nos vamos a centrar sobre todo en el e-commerce desde aquí, desde la Estación de Francia, en el corazón de Barcelona, pero que sepan que a lo largo y ancho de esta ciudad se van a encontrar otros 9 eventos más. Por ejemplo, en la antigua fábrica de Estrella Damm, en la Casa Seat y también en La Pedrera o en el Movistar Center. No se olviden además, como decíamos, que se pueden conectar por streaming. Es muy sencillo, es rápido y además es gratuito. El año pasado, como dato, que sepan que se conectaron 11.000 registrados, 11.000 usuarios de más de 100 países. Queremos que esto sea cada vez mayor y, por lo tanto, les pedimos que nos ayuden a hacer correr la voz para que seamos, como decimos, muchos más. En cualquier caso, vamos a arrancar ahora mismo este panel que va del BDATA, el futuro de los datos de los clientes de las plataformas. Y nos hacemos una pregunta. ¿A quién pertenecen estos datos? ¿Quién es el propietario de estos datos? Desde luego, hoy en día las empresas tienen más información que nunca de los clientes. Información demográfica, información de gustos, de comportamientos, muchísima información, pero eso no siempre se traduce en algo positivo, ¿no? Si las empresas no tienen el control de esos datos. Vamos a hablar de esas plataformas que almacenan los datos, de quién pertenecen estos datos, por supuesto, y quién las gestiona. Les voy a dejar ahora mismo con el moderador de esta ponencia, con César Tello. César es el director general de la Asociación Española de Economía Digital. Bienvenido, muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.
Un placer.
Muchas gracias también a la asociación por colaborar estrechamente con el BNIU, te lo queríamos decir también aquí personalmente. Un dato más para que los que nos estén viendo te ubiquen un poco más. Él es presidente del Comité Consultivo de Universal Postal Union y para que lo sepan, en su experiencia en datos, ha trabajado más de 35 años en la industria del comercio digital y la logística. Doy también la bienvenida a los ponentes, a Walter y a Ruta, que van a estar conectados online. Así que César, te dejo con ellos. Ánimo y gracias.
Muchas gracias. Bueno, pues I'm going to switch into English since our two speakers today actually speak other languages, including English, so that's going to be our universal. It's a pleasure to have you both here, Walter, Ruta. So thank you so much for coming. And welcome everybody to this session, as Jana said, called Big Data, the Future of Platforms Customer Data. Who owns the data? And I think we all have been listening in so many of these plenaries talking about how the pandemic has accelerated digitalization. And of course, on e-commerce has been probably one of the biggest winners in terms of accelerating the use that we all have of buying and shopping online. And delivery has actually got a huge part on this. Logistics have been so important during the pandemic. And not because of the pandemic, but because this was on the pipeline of regulation in Europe. In 2021, actually, it has come into place a new harmonization of data that is now mandatory on every commercial item that is sent across borders, and that has to be given in advance. Today, we're going to talk about the implications of having or converting all our packages from e-commerce in actual data that have to be managed and that have to be put in out there. That is going to have a lot of challenges, but as well it's going to have a lot of opportunities. And we will learn this from two of the probably biggest experts that we have in the matter. Actually, Hannah, I think, didn't present me, presented one of the speakers, Walter, which is fine. I haven't been 35 years in the logistics, but Walter actually has been. Walter has official positions as chairman of the consultative committee of the Universal Postal Union, is co-chair of e-commerce Europe's working committee on e-logistics, governor and secretary in European Committee for Standardization on matters to digitalize postal service, and advisor to the European Commission. He's actually been a big part of working all this harmonization across Europe. And our other speaker is Ruta Salvite. Sorry, Ruta, I'm sure you will give us a better pronunciation of your name in a minute. She's a digital government and digital services development practitioner for over 10 years. Her professional experience includes the domain of GovTech, and Ruta is a senior manager at EY Baltics, and she has managed large-scale digital transformation projects in Lithuania, Middle East, and recently in Eastern partner countries with a specific focus on facilitating e-commerce, e-trade, and e-logistics. So, Walter, Ruta, welcome today, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
So let's get started. And what I would like to do is, since you've been working so much on this harmonization from different sides, Walter, you've been very involved, of course, with e-commerce, but with the European Commission side, with the regulation side. And Ruta, you have been very much involved in a real business case of how to implement this for e-commerce and how to platform all this data that is coming into life. So what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is to give you a few minutes to put all this work that you have been done in context. So if we can start with you, Walter. For the past years, the European Union has been working on this harmonization of data for logistics and e-commerce. From July 1st, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong on the date, we have a one-stop shop for VAT across the EU 27. Also customs data, new regulation, harmonized data for coming from retailers, warehouses, providing data in advance before sending the items. Can you explain in detail all this new context and all this work that has led us to this moment?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Cesar, to give me the opportunity to share some insights. It is perhaps very important to understand the context of what's currently happening. We had a huge challenge over the last 5 to 6 years in importing e-commerce from outside the European Union into the European Union. And the main obstacle, of course, was a level playing field for vendors outside the European Union inside the European Union. It was an unlevel playing field, to be quite frank. The challenge was that the outsiders find ways of not paying VAT, find ways not complying to European regulations, find ways to have a competitive advantage, in certain cases up to 30–35%. So this was a very unsustainable situation, and the European Commission, but also the Universal Postal Union, kicked in and said, this can't stay like that. We need to change that. And one of the ways was, of course, to apply electronic data in advance on each and every commercial item, or to be more precise, on any item containing goods to be sent across borders. This happened well before the pandemic. And it was enshrined in what is called the EU VAT Ecommerce Package. When the pandemic struck in 2020, there were 2 or 3 additional things, and we were extremely happy that we did all that work over a decade prior to the pandemic. The first thing was that transport and logistics across borders was really hit, and we can see that in the newest data. There's a clear dip in 2019 where you can see that e-commerce gets a certain dip in the speed. The volumes are accelerating. We can see that all over Europe, but also globally. What happened was, quite frankly, air transport was more or less stopped, because all those commercial items are transported by passenger planes. So transport security is highly important. It is, of course, now also combined to the VAT and e-commerce package. So data in advance is not only for VAT or customs purposes, it is also for transport security, and therefore for compliance to European regulations. The first step, therefore, was on the 1st of January, where the whole UPU network made it mandatory for any commercial item to send data in advance to the postal partners in the European Union. So there was a clear standard harmonizing all the necessary data sent in advance on any kind of commercial item in a postal package. Harmonization meant that this was global. The European Union followed on the 1st of July with the EU e-commerce package. The harmonized data in that European customs model had two major effects. First of all, of course, it was focused on VAT and customs, transport security and compliance, yes, but it was also harmonizing all the data for each and every commercial entity sending and selling goods in the B2C environment. This is extremely important because it follows suit with two other developments which were not totally on the agenda, neither of the UPU nor on the agenda of the European Commission. The first was the change from the B2C environment to what is now called the O2O environment. What is the O2O environment? Well, online to offline. That's a very big theme today. Yeah, for us, retail basically means nowadays the offline and the online world have to come together. This can only happen in a fully harmonized environment. Harmonized environment has been established by all this harmonized data for each and every retailer to be used in any kind of exchange. Only that now makes it possible for a truly omni-channel environment. And the second major trend was the switch from just in time to just in case, meaning that the logistics and transport was really hit. Now we have to focus on resilience. Of course, all the big success in e-commerce was only possible because it was so highly efficient and very lean when it comes to global delivery networks. However, that increased the complexity. And as soon as the pandemic hit, that complexity took a real toll. To give you the latest data here is a third of all the global transport and delivery network disappeared. The UPU network is suffering because a third of the volume is gone. This is due to the lack of resilience, and the resilience now is picking up on a much more local, national, or European regional approach, where we are looking, when it comes to delivery of e-commerce consignments, into the clear sustainability. That's very important. It is only possible because we achieved that level of harmonization. And the last big impact is right now happening. Only because the data is available on each and every item prior to delivery, it is possible to switch that data now also to look into sustainability, in particular when it comes to the environment and the social aspects of e-commerce as well. So data has been the foundation, and I'm happy to say all that data is highly harmonized and will enable our retailers to regain the property on that data into their own environment. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Walter, for that context. I think when we get into more questions, we'll probably would like to hear some examples that actually kind of lands all these examples that you have given and what data is behind that. But I think we can start doing that with Ruta. Ruta, welcome to this session. You have been involved on the retail side, creating a pilot for e-commerce to actually comply with creating a virtual warehouse, if I understand correctly, for the required exchange of information between Germany and 3 other countries. Can you explain a little bit this project further and give us a little bit of clarification probably of what Walter has explained at how it's being transformed into a real case with retailers?
Thank you, Cesar. Actually, it's very nice to visit Barcelona virtually. Would be a pleasure to be on site. Indeed, what Walter was sharing was turned into the practical testing in one of the projects that is run by the European Commission. And I would like actually to give some context on that project to understand better not only what we did, but also why we did. So the project is called EU for Digital, and this is the program by one of the directorates of the Commission, DG NEAR, which is responsible for the neighborhood enlargement. And the project is oriented towards the Eastern partner countries, and these are the 6 partner countries: Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, to support the region, the countries, to be closer to the European digital single market. So the topics that we are working on are related to different digital aspects, from telecommunications to trust and security, ICT innovations, etc., etc. And one of the topics is facilitation of e-trade, e-logistics, and the e-commerce. And our approach in that project, which is already run for more than 2 years, and by EY in consortium with other companies, is to test. And therefore, when we started approaching the topic of e-commerce, what we did first, of course, we had to understand where each of those Eastern partner countries stand. So we did, of course, the assessment, looked into the ecosystem, compared it with European and other global practices, and what Walter just mentioned, we also looked how countries are prepared for the changes that are upcoming from the July 2021. Are they in general aware of the VAT package that is coming? And we identified multiple challenges that are there in the areas of ecosystem, of standards, of regulations. But you know, the analysis and the recommendations, probably it's one side we wanted to test. We wanted to come up with a solution that helps to solve some of the challenges that were identified, and that helps to prepare those countries for the changes that are coming in Europe. Because if you want to be a part of the digital single market, you have to be ready to exchange the data. You have to have the data. So this is the idea of the virtual warehouse came into our focus, and the idea behind the virtual warehouse is the following. We are giving an access to the company. Our focus companies were small and medium enterprises from Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. For example, from Armenia, there was a company selling socks. There was a company from Azerbaijan that was selling certain toolkits to store your pens, pencils, and etc. Yes. So these are the types of companies where we were dealing with, and this warehouse allows those companies to enter the data into one single place. So they're working with this virtual warehouse. They enter the data about their goods. This data is prepared in a harmonized format, and I think Walter could even further support on elaborating on this, because we were together in collaboration with Walter also did this project. So the data is aligned with customs format, with postal format, and is needed for the marketplaces. So this data is placed on the marketplace, and we tested the placement with the German marketplace, eBay, and it's also shared with the custom authority in the country and the post. So the benefits for the companies is that you don't need to enter and to understand the specifics of different marketplaces, because you place the data about your goods in one single warehouse. And at the same time, you have to submit the necessary data for compliance requirements for declarations also in one place. And then it's shared between the different actors in the ecosystem. So I think this is in short. The pilot was successful. We have been doing also concluding sessions with the participants, and the participants were, as mentioned, those small and medium companies. But besides that, we had also the customs administrations from the countries participating, the postal delivery operators participating, representatives from the ministries on national level supervising this area. And well, as this was the pilot, so we provided further recommendations how to further adopt it, and currently providing well, consultations how to enable it in a production, in a full-scale environment. So this is, in short, the practical side and how we approach the changes in the European Union from that perspective.
Thank you very much, Ruta. Well, now I think we have a better picture of the EU requirements and have seen that application and that pilot that Ruta, you were presenting us. Now I would like to start a conversation on how this is going to develop into a roadmap, right? So firstly, and I think Ruta, you were already kind of saying a little bit with example, but I think it would be nice if we can clarify a little bit more further from the retailer perspective, right? I'm a little e-commerce. You said you were working in Germany and other countries through a virtual warehouse in which I understand the e-commerce could provide all the data that is required for delivery, so that this virtual warehouse can deliver it to wherever it's needed, whether it's a marketplace or the European regulators. But as an e-commerce, I guess there are some challenges. I can see the benefits of having one-stop shop for VAT. I can understand finding these partners that are going to help you to actually deliver all this data in one place and forget about many of these regulatory issues. But what would you say are other challenges and benefits for a small e-commerce, so we can understand further why e-commerce should do it? We know they have to do it, but you know what it is. In order for this to actually be successful, e-commerce, especially small and medium ones, should be looking at, we want to do it. There's a certain benefits to actually getting into this data that for many times we always get that seems that there's more requirements coming to us rather than a benefit for us in sharing that data. How is that data going to benefit me as an e-commerce? Either one of you.
Maybe Walter, I could start, but then I'm sure you will also complement. Because I think I started a little bit also answering this question. In our project, this was one of the key questions. So we wanted to understand the final user and to make something which provides benefits. And we also do some other consultations in e-commerce area. So we understand that even though COVID-19 helped to boost e-commerce, but at the same time, companies still lack knowledge and resources and understanding to sell cross-border. And they very often also need support not only to place those goods on marketplaces, but also to fill in the necessary declarations that are required to deliver goods, and especially when it comes to the other region, like with the specific requirements like European Union. So what we noticed and what we heard from the companies, there were, I would summarize in two key benefits. So first of all, that you enter information about your product in one place, and it is then listed on multiple marketplaces. So you don't need to go just with one marketplace, you can go with multiple marketplaces. And then the second benefit is that you don't need to input additional data for other actors to finish export procedures. So this is in short, and I'm sure, Walter, you will have some additional thoughts on that.
So Walter, what are the benefits?
Thank you, Ruta. Thank you, Cesar. What we see currently in retail is that the classic offline retailers struggled to become online. Why is that? Well, because they didn't see that they need a certain harmonized data to actually present their goods, their merchandise on certain platforms. And if they would like to go on certain platforms, there are many platforms who have a clear business model by retaining those retailers directly on their platform. Even in the environment of supplementary services, like the documents, like the documentation, like the fiscal documentation, like the compliance documentation, like customs documentation, whatever you need. And even further though, in the future, this will not be less, but more. Yeah? You will have to file for certain packaging regulations, certain sustainability regulations. You have to look into your carbon footprint, yeah, whatever. So we came, or I think we should come for a clear perspective where it is the property of the retailer that he is selling, and it's therefore also the property representing his retail goods. The data should stay his property. And the only way to do that is to help him in an infrastructure approach to understand what is actually needed for selling some retail goods to a certain given person. So they need to be clearly identified using standards developed over the last 20 years in the European Union, so that data stays with the merchant. What is sold is clearly harmonized already. It has to be clearly qualified in a generic way, so that the authorities know what kind of VAT or what kind of customs is applicable. And it also has to be clearly described in an individual way, so that the brand and the look and feel of a certain retail organization is reflected. And of course, the value of the goods have to be presented in a harmonized way. We still have in the European Union different currencies, and for sure global. But all this is now harmonized. And if that's really maintained in one central hub, where the data still belongs to the merchants, to the retailer, then all the supplementary services are directly triggered if a sale is conducted on a platform, on a marketplace chosen by the retailer to engage with back in his own environment where the data belongs to him. So what's the big benefit of that? Well, it will be triggered automatically because the data is already available. So all those documents to be shipped, of course, electronically to the end recipient are generated automatically. In most cases, in real time, in most cases with minimal cost, whereas we already saw with postal operators, parcel operators, certain marketplaces that they charge between €1.50 up to 25 euros for those documents. And Ruta can support that, hopefully, because we saw that all this can be done in real time without any major effort if the retailer still maintains the property on that data. So there are huge benefits, huge benefits. We are talking about an infrastructure which maintains the gold, which is represented by data in the hands of retail. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, I think we get right now at this point the benefits of having harmonized data for so many things. Obviously, when we normalize information, we can actually manage data for many, many, many different uses. Definitely, if I'm an e-commerce, it's going to be a process of knowing what I have to do in terms of all that added information that I'm going to be asked and requested. But I guess the logistics, your logistics partners, your supply chain partners are supposed to be helping you with this, But this gets to the point in which I think right now, I'm being this enforced from July, there's still a long way for everybody to actually be able to take advantage of this. You mentioned one big use, which is that with that data, you can actually upload all your products to different marketplaces because the marketplaces will know everything they have to know about the products from that standardization, harmonized information. But from the regulatory point of July, what is the roadmap for enforcement, if you know this, and how is this going across Europe at this moment? Because Ruta, you were mentioning a pilot. We are in October, and you were mentioning a pilot in Germany with Armenia, I think, and some other countries. How is enforcement going? Is there a deadline in which authorities are going to say, no matter what, everybody has to be compliant and giving this amount of data in these formats, and so on? Either one.
So, Walter, maybe you could start from the compliance side, and I can complement.
Yeah, thank you, Ruta. Thank you, Cesar. The VAT package is actually in force since the 1st of July. The first VAT and customs returns were due in August. The second round just finished in September, and the authorities are currently analyzing the effects the whole package had. So data is not really available publicly, but what has been leaked is that even as I already mentioned, cross-border e-commerce, in particular coming from Asia, was down 30%. Customs authorities reported a sharp increase in VAT collected. Yeah? So one can say it was a big success, in particular for creating a level playing field for European e-commerce. So the first big tick is done. The second big thing is that the next big steps for all that harmonized data can be already envisaged. So we saw that already in Germany. Germany passed a law just a couple of months ago by saying we demand that the logistics operators have that data in advance on each and every commercial item sent domestically available. In particular, when it comes to unattended delivery in things like parcel boxes, parcel stations, and so on. Yeah, so this kind of risk analysis and risk management is happening as well, giving a clear indication that anyone engaged in e-commerce, even domestically in Germany, will need that data. And I'll stop here and would like to hand it over to Ruta.
So, Ruta, anything to add?
I think one thing to add about the pilot that we did between Germany and South Caucasus countries, it is a technological solution which facilitates the transition because one way or another the postal operators, the customs authorities, and even the larger companies, they are adjusting to the changes, and they are providing the data in necessary formats and in necessary timelines. But what we try to do, and probably here also the goal of this discussion is all the transformations, especially well, when we have digital possibilities, they could be facilitated so that it's not more difficult, like you said, for companies to figure out what to do and where to provide data, but that digital actually facilitates those changes and the transition is more smooth. And yes, it's already, we passed July, but at the same time, it's better probably later than never.
Thank you both. We still have a little bit of time, so I would like you now to go ahead and think a little bit forward into the future, right? Let's say now we are, I don't know how many months ahead, and this is really full enforced. We really are talking about a single market in terms of harmonization. Everybody's doing the one-stop shop for both VAT and all the data from all retail commercial packages across Europe. And there is a bunch of data that can be used for so many other things, right? I can see there, and we are here in an event with a lot of startups. I can see a lot of startups wanting to access, for example, that data and developing services on top of this data, understanding better customer behavior, and so on and so forth, right? And this session is actually called Who Owns the Data, right? We also are having now coming a lot of regulation from the European Union in terms of artificial intelligence, but also data governance. And we're talking on, in I think all the different markets about that data governance, which is great to have some type of generosity in terms of sharing data for everybody to actually exploit and make a bigger usage collaboratively. But no matter what, data is going to be the new euro, right? The new currency. So who really is going to own this data? Because I understand it's the e-commerce who really is delivering this data, but is delivering to the European authorities. The marketplaces will have also some of this data. Who is the owner of this data, and how do you foresee that this scheme of data governance can grow into something bigger in the European ecosystem? Either one of you. I know it's a bold, maybe futuristic question, but I'm sure there's people already talking about, well, I'm providing all this data to the authorities, but this data has value at some point, right? So is there going to be any return for the e-commerce if other companies, for example, use that data?
Maybe I can start, but probably I'll touch on a bit another angle, because you know, this is indeed a very valuable thing that each company has. So it's their data, and what we often discuss with our experts, including Walter, so how those companies, being it small companies or bigger companies, can have this sovereignty or ownership of the data, and can share according to their needs. And I think this is the key thing to understand. And I think sometimes even companies do not understand the value. And therefore, it's very important when regulators, when, for example, European Commission or national regulators come in and try to facilitate this, that the data is given back to me as an owner of the data. And I think one very nice example where I think European Commission probably moved even further in terms of regulation and in terms of also some implementing acts. So it's electronic freight transport information regulation, which indicates that until 2025, there will be multiple certified platforms where me as a logistics operator could keep my data about logistics, and I can give access to the authorities to actually check it online. So this is, I think, a very practical example that it's not only e-commerce, but also multiple other areas where the data is given back and is actually, well, it's used in a way it's supposed to be used. And one is important aspect that we are not talking anymore about documents. We are talking about actual data. So I think I answered in a bit different angle, but wanted to really focus and bring up this message of the ownership.
Okay, Walter, any views on that?
Absolutely, yes. Being involved in the further digitalization of transport and logistics in Europe as well, I can only compliment to what Ruta just said. It is actually about a federation of platforms. So we are talking about a totally new infrastructure, a European infrastructure, providing the different necessary data harmonization so that all participants in the market can actually share that data without losing the ownership on their own data. And the first step into that new world has been what I call the EU customs data model. The EU customs data model has been used for harmonizing the necessary data for e-commerce, cross-border e-commerce, intra-EU e-commerce in the way we just described, and gave a clear hands-on example in that e-commerce pilot called the virtual warehouse. So to move that one step further, what can be done with all that data to give certain hints to your startup companies? Quite a lot, because we are moving into an environment which will be highly dynamic. Give you an example. A city like Barcelona, or a city like Vienna, or a city like Berlin will have to be smart, very smart in the very near future, because if the growth of parcels and packages goes on like today, with the growth of, in your case, Spain, you know that much better, Cesar, than me, but about 20%, then just imagine what happens with all the parcel and postal delivery. We need a highly dynamic environment where all the participants work together to achieve what we need to achieve when it comes to the Green Deal and other highly important changes in the very near future. This can be only achieved if we collaborate, but we need to know who owns the data. So data sovereignty and the governance of all that is highly important. It comes down to the waste. We shouldn't have waste at all. We need to know what kind of packaging is used, and even the content of our parcels is highly important and will be recorded quite soon. All those standards and all those frame legislation is underway. This is very, very interesting, because the European Commission will propose certain changes based on the Green Deal in November and December this year, and this will affect transport, logistics, postal traffic, the way we conduct business in delivery for e-commerce as well. This can only happen if retail still possesses the data on each and every item sold over platforms and marketplaces, because they will be the supplier or even the owner of the products and services supplied. These are only very few examples, but this goes deep into logistics and transport. It goes deeply into the way we live in the future. It goes deeply into direct communication with end consumers about their preferences of certain supply of parcels and their products and services. Just a few examples.
Yeah, thank you so much, Walter. And we could stay here probably running more examples, but we're running out of time. So I don't know if there is any questions from the audience, or there's no more time for questions.
Te damos las gracias, César, por esta intervención. También a Walter y Ruta.
Thank you
very much for your interventions and your vision of the future. Nosotros vamos a hacer una especie de resumen rápido. Hemos podido conocer el contexto de la regulación europea en este sentido, los retos del e-commerce para los pequeños comercios y también el beneficio de tener pormenorizados todos esos datos. El futuro, pues ese mercado único de armonización de datos. Nos quedamos aquí porque, como decimos, no tenemos más tiempo. Nos vamos, no sin antes dar las gracias a todos nuestros patrocinadores globales, el Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, el Ministerio de Transportes, Akbar y también Servihabitat. Nos vemos en 10 minutos con un panel sobre moda y sobre cómo el coronavirus ha acelerado el e-commerce. Hasta ahora.